All right. Good evening. Kim Baker here with the Victim Survivor Conqueror Ministry. Coming to you on this Tuesday evening. Okay. All right. Tonight will be the last night for Am I Living with a Narcissist? Okay. Um, and then after finish up tonight, then I'll go into what will be our next study that we will do. But before we get to that, down in the bottom left hand corner of your screen, you're going to see where it says vscministry.com. Okay. If you click on that, you'll go to our website there. You can find a lot of information about the ministry. Also, you can download this material, Am I Living with the Narcissist, or any of the other 9 studies, discussions that we do. Okay. Then up in the upper left-hand corner, there's a QR code. If you use your phone and scan on that, it will take you to our private PayPal account. Okay, our secure PayPal account. We do depend upon donations to keep this ministry running. So if you could help in any way, any amount would be very much appreciated. Okay. All right. Well, let's get on into tonight's material. Okay. So tonight we're going to start out. We're going to end up with healing after being in a narcissistic abuse situation. Okay. So, people with narcissistic traits often show patterns of emotional abuse or verbal abuse born out of narcissistic manipulation. Okay. Now, one thing we have to that I want you to understand, and when I go into this and when I talk about this, I'm not giving an excuse for a person, excuse me, uh, abusing. Okay. But people that are narcissistic, that do have narcissistic traits, okay, they do tend to have been emotionally and verbally abused themselves. Okay. Now, just because you've been emotionally abused or verbally abused does not necessarily mean that you will turn out to abuse or turn out to be narcissistic. Okay? This kind of emotional abuse can be termed narcissistic abuse. If you've been in a relationship with someone with narcissistic traits or NPD, then it can be hard to let go of past hurts and move on. Okay? And we all know that. If you've been abused, you understand how hard that it can be to move on. Okay? Of course, not everyone with NPD or narcissistic traits is abusive in a relationship. Okay? Just what I just talked about. If they are, then the narcissistic manipulation can be subtle, but it's also toxic. Okay? It's toxic for the victim. So if you've been in a relationship where you've been subjected to emotional abuse, then healing after the narcissistic abuse can be a very painful experience. Okay, so if you were verbally and emotionally abused, maybe as a child growing up, and then you get in a relationship with someone that is narcissistic, it it's just like a double whammy that's hit you. Okay, you might keep overthinking about what you could have done differently or how you could have handled certain situations. You might even think as far as rekindling a previous toxic narcissistic relationship. And we see that. We see that in people that they go from one abusive relationship to another. Okay. And a lot of people think, well, that don't make a lot of sense. Why would you do that? Well, it's because of what we become comfortable with. Right? And and I know in normal rationale to think that being comfortable in a narcissistic relationship seems off, but that's what we do as human beings. Okay? Growing up, there's a lot of us that's probably said, that I will never treat my kids the way my daddy treated me, or I won't ever do like what my mom done. Go back and look at your life, and you're probably going to see traits of your mom and your dad throughout your life, especially if you will be 100% honest with yourself. Okay? The cycle of narcissistic abuse can be tricky and hard to break. There are ways that you can begin your inner healing after narcissistic abuse. First off, the very first thing we have to do, we have to be able to accept the truth. Okay? You have to be 100% honest with yourself, and you need to be 100% honest with God also. Okay? Yes, I got in this relationship. Yes, it was narcissistic. Yes, it was abusive. Okay? Very first thing, we have to acknowledge. Acknowledging has power. Narcissistic personality disorder does not just affect romantic relationships. It's not a set rule that you'll suffer narcissistic abuse from a romantic partner only. Okay? We can be in other relationships, work, okay, friendships, where we could be in a narcissistic relationship, but it's not a romantic relationship. So you can experience narcissistic abuse from a narcissistic mother, a father. It could be a sibling. It could be a brother. It could be a sister or it could be a friend. And like I said, it also could be a boss. Accepting that you are or that you have been in a relationship with a narcissist is the very first step. Okay. It's just like any abuse. Okay. There's got to be a time where you come to the realization of admitting where you had been. Okay. That doesn't mean that you're a terrible person, uh, that you deserved it, anything like that, because we cannot heal properly if we don't ever acknowledge it. Once you acknowledge this, you can accept that you experienced narcissistic abuse. Okay? And here's the thing: is this is you don't need to be embarrassed or shameful about it or feel guilty. You're not the one that died. Okay? But accepting truth is actually a way to stop blaming yourself. I have heard so many people over the last 10 years of doing this ministry of people telling me that the absolutely hardest person to forgive is herself. I that you would absolutely be shocked at how many people has told me that that is the hardest part of forgiveness is forgiving themselves. So what's one of the first things that we need to do? Okay. Well, we talked about what's the first thing is. First thing is we have to acknowledge. We have to recognize, we have to acknowledge. Okay. But next, what we need to be able to learn is how to set up important boundaries. Because here is what I consider one of the main issues of why we are abused. And not so much kids, but as young adults and as adults, is because we do not understand this process right here of setting boundaries. Once you accept the truth, the next step is to set important, healthy boundaries. The first thing that you need to do is to cut off all contact with the narcissist. Now, is that easier said than done? Yeah, absolutely it is. Okay. Had a young lady that 7 years ago come into the ministry, was going through this ministry, and she had just gotten out of a narcissistic relationship. Okay. She was in that relationship for 20 years. Just just imagine how much guilt that she carried because of that aspect of staying for 20 years. And she carried a lot of guilt about that. She carried a lot of shame. But I have seen her go from having a lot of guilt and a lot of shame to understanding that she is free now. Okay? And you may think, well, I can't cut off all contact. Okay? And you may not be able to 100% cut it off because you may be in a situation where y'all may have kids together. Um, unless the father or the mother, whichever case it might be, would give up the rights to the kids, then there is going to be a certain amount of contact because you have kids involved. Okay. So that is a much more difficult situation. Okay. But it doesn't mean that you have to stay there in the same house with that. Okay. There are places that will help. Okay. You just got to research your area where you're at and ask for help. Don't be ashamed. Healing after narcissistic abuse is not easy. Healing after any abuse is not easy, okay? But learning to set firm boundaries get a lot of pushback in the beginning. Okay? If you start setting boundaries with someone that's abusive, they will push back very hard. Okay? I'm just I'm just letting you know right up front. Okay? You're in for a battle. But here's the thing, here is the deal. Okay? If you set a boundary, okay, you say, here's this boundary, you will not cross that boundary. If you cross that boundary, then here is the consequence for crossing that boundary. Okay? All right. So, what do we do when that person crosses that boundary? We have to implement the consequence. We implement the consequence, then we reaffirm to that person, here's the boundary. If you cross it, this is what's going to happen. This is what's going to take place. Okay? But here is the thing that you have to do is this is every single time that boundary is broken, you have to implement your consequence. Okay, and I think back to the scriptures where they're asking Jesus, well, how many times should I forgive my brother? 7 times? They threw out this number. Well, 7 times? You know, should I forgive him 1 day a week? And what was Jesus' answer? No, 70 times 7. Okay. Was Jesus actually giving a definite answer? Uh, I really don't know what the original Hebrew or the original Greek says. I I just what I way I interpret that and the way that I believe is this is that Jesus is saying that we, no matter what, we have to forgive, whether it's over and over and over and over and over. Okay, so you set a boundary, they cross that boundary, you implement the consequence. Okay, now I believe that we we're supposed to forgive that person for crossing that boundary. That doesn't mean that we don't implement these consequences. Okay, but here's the deal: is if you implement that consequence this time, the next time it should be a little bit easier to do. If it gets crossed again, then you implement it again and you set the consequences in action. And what will eventually happen is that boundary will quit being violated. Okay. Now, how many times? Don't know. I wish I could tell you there was. You're gonna need to expect to set consequences this many times. So you can start doing a countdown. Okay, and when I get to this point, I won't have to do this no more. Well, I don't know. Okay. I think this will be a good opportunity for me to kind of make an announcement right here that for the past 2 or 3 weeks, I've been working on a brand new study that I will be presenting on here at some point in time. Not sure when that will be. Okay. I will do it the very first time on Thursday nights in our in person class. Okay. And that is building better boundaries. This is going to be a very intense, very, very hands on study and discussion. Okay. So I'll be announcing it soon when you might be able to expect it. Here on Tuesday night, it will be later in the fall before I do it, before I present it here online. Okay. Uh, so let's get back to this about the healing. Okay. If you can't cut off contact, then you need to remain firm with your boundaries. It's also important to also let the narcissist in your life know that some things are just not acceptable, that you will not accept. Okay? And if those boundaries start getting crossed, there will be consequences. Okay? So, when setting boundaries, you need to be very specific. Okay? Setting boundaries takes good communication. So when you're setting boundaries in your relationship, you need to make sure that you are extremely clear on your expectations, what you expect. For example, you can explain to them that you're only available via email if they would like to continue communicating. Okay? That takes the personal side out of it. You can read it when you want to. Okay? The main negative with the email is that it is a permanent record. Okay. So if you say something that you really don't want other people to know and you put it in an email, it's there. It's permanent. It can be shared. Boundaries are important and you need to stick to them when recovering from narcissistic abuse. Okay. And actually all abuse. Any abuse that you have suffered from. Self compassion. When it comes to healing from narcissistic abuse, self blaming is a thing and it can be very toxic to your mental health. So you need to understand is that a little bit of self care, self compassion can go a long way from stopping you from blaming yourself. Not because of what you did, but because of what the narcissist did to you. Right? And we're talking about guilt. Right? So is this true guilt or is this false guilt? Because there is a difference. There is a huge difference in guilt, whether it's true or it's false. If it's false, that means you were not responsible. So if we're not responsible for it, we've got to be able to figure out a way to get past that guilt. Okay? If you need help with guilt, go to our website, vscministry.com, find study materials, look up guilt, download that material. It will help you through that process. Okay? Remind yourself that what had happened was not your fault. Okay? If you've only come to the point where you can acknowledge what you've been through, reward yourself by telling yourself, hey, I lived for 10 years without ever acknowledging it. I have finally acknowledged where I've been. Okay? Then the next thing is we've got to start working on forgiving ourselves and to know that you weren't to blame. Okay? Need some help with forgiveness? Go to vscministry.com. Go to study materials and you can download forgiveness. It will help you. Next, practice patience. In relationships, no matter how perfect that they might be, There are times that even good relationships can be hard to navigate at times. Okay? But when you're recovering from narcissistic abuse, you really need to practice patience. Okay? Patience with yourself, patience with the healing process. Okay? It if you were in a narcissistic abuse for 10 years, do not expect you to go to one counseling session, to go to one support group meeting, and all of a sudden everything is good. Okay? Now, can God do that? Yes, through God, He can do, but it normally doesn't work that way. Okay? It's not easy to heal from narcissistic abuse, but with patience, it can become manageable. Yes, it very well can. Okay? To move on from narcissistic abuse, you need to be in a place where you know that you deserve love, you deserve positivity, and most importantly, you deserve happiness. And this can be achieved through practicing patience, okay, with yourself and with the situations that you find yourself in. Okay? Don't ignore self care. Okay? Just like self compassion and patience, self care matters. This practice of care yourself means meeting your mental, emotional, and physical needs while strengthening your mind and body connection. Okay? This thing is all connected. Your head, your mind, your body, everything's connected. Okay? So if our mental capacity or our mental health is off kilter, it can throw everything off. It can throw your mind off. It can throw your body off. Okay? So, what are some ways that you can practice self care? Okay. Well, you can try these things. Okay. Managing your stress level. Um, I know that's not nowhere a situation that's easy to do. Okay. But there's some things that you can do to help manage your stress level. Make sure you get enough sleep. Eat healthy. Do things that you enjoy. Okay. What are some things that you've done or you would like to have done before you got in this relationship? Okay. Well, if there are some things that you wish that you could go back to that you used to do that you enjoy, or things that you think you would enjoy, start doing them. Um, Try to connect yourself and associate with people that are positive. Get regular exercise. Practicing mindfulness or other relaxation techniques. Okay? If If you're into yoga, you can do yoga. Meditation, you can do meditation. I'm not a big meditation person, but you could. Uh, if you're used to reading the Bible for 30 minutes a day, do 45. Okay. You will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast because they trust in you. Isaiah chapter 26, verse 3. Ask for support from loved ones. Okay. Excuse me, I'm really sorry. The narcissist in your life may have been the one that you've leaned on for emotional support, or you thought you were leaning on them. I mean, you thought maybe they were giving you emotional support, but it turns out they were actually turning things around on you. Okay. So maybe try asking for support from someone else. Okay? Here's the thing. Uh, this is one of the reasons why that I started this ministry, and the way that I have conducted it over the last 10 years. Has it changed? Yes, absolutely. I've made changes. When I felt like when God was leading me in a certain way, yes, I went that way. I've done that. Okay. But I've always tried to make sure that all the classes were set up where you could speak what's on your heart and not be afraid to be judged, not to be talked about, or for someone to go start spreading things that you said in there privately. Okay. Praise God, I've never had an issue that I know of. Okay. Because I've let everybody know that will not be tolerated. But here's the point is that we need to, do we need God in this situation? Absolutely. I just cannot imagine trying to heal from this without God being in my life. Okay. And I'm not saying that God is not enough, but here's the thing God uses people. Okay. God has used people to raise disciples. And the point is we need people that others can come in confidence and be able to open up and speak and seek support. But make sure that we're being supported by people that don't take us for granted. Maybe that we are seeking support from other people that's been through some of the exact same things that we've been through. This step will not only help in healing after narcissistic abuse, but it can also help rebuild your trust in others. Because what is one of the things that is destroyed from abusive relationships, and that is trust. It takes time And it takes work to rebuild trust in a relationship. Seeking support from loved ones can help share compassion. It can distract you from your past, and it can help keep you busy. It can help overcome self blame, and it will validate your experience. When you can open up, when you can open up your heart and share your heart and share your life and share your story, and you know that you're not being condemned, you're not being put down, what does that do? It validates it validates in our mind exactly what we've been through. That, hey, you've been through this, but you're trying to change your direction of your life. You're trying to make your life better. Okay? And that validation goes a long ways towards healing. Very long ways. Maybe you need to seek professional support. Okay? I, I really wish there was not a stigma with this. Okay? But if you feel like you need professional support, by all means, seek it out. Okay? But I will say, be very careful on who you seek out. I would very much make sure that they are coming from a Christian perspective, that they are implementing Jesus Christ and the Lord God Almighty in the situation. Okay? All right. So that is the end of our Am I Living with a Narcissist? Okay. So, uh, next Tuesday night, I will be starting a brand new study. Okay. Not a brand new study to the ministry, but it will be confrontation. Okay. Learning how to do it God's way. Okay. Did you know that God gave us specific instructions in Matthew on how to do confrontations? Yes, God has given us explicit instructions. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to learn God's way. Okay, so if you don't have a copy of Confrontation, Learning God's Way, go to our website, vscministry.com. Go to study materials. You can download Confrontation, and then you can follow along in the book with us starting next Tuesday night. Okay? Again, in the upper left-hand corner, there's a QR code. Okay? We are a nonprofit ministry that does depend upon donations. Okay? I will be very honest. Donations are very far and few right now. Okay? And I know that with the financial situation in this country, how it is, I know it's tough. But would you consider skipping one Starbucks and donate $5. $5. Okay. All right. Thursday night, if you are in the Midland, Odessa, Texas area, okay, if you're in one of these two cities or in the surrounding area, Thursday night, we have an in-person support group that meets at 7 p.m. at 3319 North Golder Avenue in Odessa, Texas. Okay. We start at 7 o'clock. We have coffee, we have cold water. Come on out and join us. Okay. And then we'll be back here next Tuesday night with confrontation. Okay. So God bless and have a great rest of your week.